we know that USC, I mean, we talked about it a lot last week, but the recruiting has been, off the charts for USC. Just incredible, scouting from Chad Bowden, and Lincoln Riley and Rob Ryan and everyone else involved to get these guys to be bought into USC. And we saw this week, USC gets modern day linebacker. You can also play edge rusher, Sean Scott, and then linebacker, I believe from San Bernardino, Taylor Johnson. And I mean, I watched some of his tape, so I can talk on him in a moment. But I know that Sean Scott is an incredibly versatile player. He's a guy who could really be, I mean, you talk about two-way players, you usually think about like offensive defense, but he's a guy who could like be a two-way player in terms of linebacker and D-line. He's a guy you could put on either. What are your thoughts on some of these, just recruits coming in and how the recruiting has been able to keep up this traction?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a lot last week, but just being able to lock down the California recruiting trail, the last time we saw it happen, that's when USC was, I'm not going to say in its prime, because obviously the 70s dominated then, but the early 2000s, last time we really saw USC lock down the California recruiting trail. They're doing that this year. I want to say it's 16 recruits from California this year. Do you know if that 16, 17? It
sounds like a good number.
High to mid teams number, whatever that is. USC is locking down the California recruiting trail. Sean Scott is a phenomenal addition. He has offers from Ohio State, Tennessee, Penn State, a bunch of really good programs. He's versatile on that defensive line. I think if I had to guess, he'll probably play on the edge when he comes to USC, just because that's most of where, at least the scouting, where the tape has him playing. Also, definitely a little linebacker. But he's versatile. He play on the line. He can play linebacker. He's quick off the pass rush, decent run defender as well. It's a phenomenal addition.
Yeah, I think USC has 17 California recruits. I could be wrong. Maybe
they've been 17 with Johnson adding today.
Yeah. I mean, watching some of Johnson's tape, he's a freight train. Like, he's a guy who he plays very vertically. Like, you can, rely on him to maybe cheat up in the secondary a little bit and have his eye on whoever's retrieving the ball on the opposing team. He also does a great job of just getting sideline to sideline. Like, he plays a vertical game, but he can be very horizontal as well. And I think he's going to be a huge addition. And again, Rob Ryan. I mean, Rob Ryan recruited both of these guys.
He's killing it, dude. Unsurprisingly, of course.
Yeah. I mean, he's a guy who has NFL experience. He's a guy that's been in the game for a long time. And I think him as a hire, we're going to look at, years down the line and be like, dang, Rob Ryan was a good coaching hire. It's the same way that we look at Coach Henderson, a year later in retrospect and think, wow, Coach Henderson has really done wonders in fixing this D-line. And I think that goes back to Lincoln Riley and the front office, just, being able to acknowledge what went wrong in prior years. But yeah, I mean, I think Johnson, of course, he's not as maybe high profile of a recruit as Scott. Of course, the modern day pipeline getting reestablished is huge too.
About time, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Scott had he had a interest from Arizona, San Diego State, UNLV, Oregon State. So maybe a little bit more under the radar, but 3-star recruit. Again, he's really quick.
Sorry. He said Scott.
Oh, sorry. Taylor Johnson. Taylor Johnson is just, incredibly athletic freak. He's a guy that just feels like he's a freight train. He can get anywhere he needs to be. I really like that pickup.
Yeah. Walter Clark says Scott being recruited as a linebacker. I believe it. Like we said, I mean, he's versatile. He can play on both the defensive line and linebacker. Would not be surprised if he plays linebacker in college. I'm not going to say small just because 16, 17-year-old, a lot of time to put on weight, but would not surprise at all if he's being recruited as a linebacker who can come play on the edge as well. I mean, think about Abdul Carter, who's technically listed as like a linebacker, at least throughout most of college he was. Of course, he's an edge rusher.
Yeah. And then other news this week, Cohen Brown decommitting from USC, 3-star wide receiver. I mean, again, that's their first decommit in a long time. They only have 2 total in the 2026 class. Probably nothing notable, right?
Look, I think I said this last week, maybe a couple weeks ago. I'm never going to worry about wide receivers at USC, really. There's plenty. We talked about like Luke Weaver and all sorts of those guys a couple weeks ago. I'm really not worried about wide receivers, I'll say, specifically decommitting. So that doesn't really concern me. It sucks to lose a recruit. Maybe he's the next, I don't know, whoever, but not the biggest loss.
Yeah. And then again, I mean, looking at USC's recruits as a whole, Sean Scott, if you look at every player kind of ranked by their 24/7 ranking, he's in kind of the middle. So again, it just shows how deep this class is. Ahead of him is Jonas Williams, quarterback, of course, big pickup, and right behind him is Luke Weaver, the wide receiver. So he's right in the middle of those two. And then Taylor Johnson, kind of lower. He's the third lowest ranked recruit for USC, but again, it just shows how deep that this class could be in 2026. He's right behind Chase Dennis, the offensive tackle, and right ahead of Malik Brooks, D lineman. And so, yeah, I mean, just a lot of deep players adding to this class. And I mean, I think if you're USC, you kind of just sit and wait at this point and just hope you have a good season and bring in these guys next year coming around and hoping you don't get any or that many decommits.
Yeah, I mean, just adding on to that, there's 28 total commits right now in this class. 14 of them, including Scott, are ranked within the top 200 of players in the country. That's massive, especially when you compare the past couple recruiting classes Lincoln Riley have. They've been fine. That one in 2023, I believe, was seventh, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, Deuce Robinson, Zach
Yeah.
Rice, all those guys, Malachi and Nelson. But this is by far the best one that at least we have seen at USC.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the one thing that this class has that the other ones might not is depth, because I think the sort of like playing chess not checkers thing I'm thinking about is the fact that if you look at that 23 class, USC already had Caleb Williams. Like, you knew that like the baton was going to be passed to Malachi Nelson at some point. Then that doesn't work out. Well, newsflash for you, USC has a guy named Hassan Longstreet who will probably take the keys the first year that these young kids will be, enrolling at USC.
We're kind of assuming next year, right?
Yeah. So I think that's a huge thing to think about because, I mean, Caleb Williams, leaving, it just left a big hole in USC's offense because he was able to do a lot. And he sort of, of course, had those high profile recruits. But when those guys were able to take the leap, I mean, he was already gone at that point. Whereas Longstreet very well could have, 2 years playing with some of these guys and be able to develop, even more talent around him.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've talked a lot. We already talked about like the receivers and what they're going to do, the Mekhi Lemons, the Jacoby Lanes, all sorts of that stuff. I mean, when Longstreet gets the keys, when Jonas Williams, I'll even throw out there, guys like Sean Alston, Trent Mosley, these really highly ranked recruits on that offense, on those offensive skill positions, those guys are going to be the people he's throwing to, who he's handing the ball off to. That is, you got to secure those guys so that your future, the quarterback, the most important player on the team, has weapons to go forward.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, I mean, just look at, I mean, we've talked about this class a lot, but I mean, every position.
We should talk about this. This is the best thing about USC football.
Oh, no, not complaining. I mean, look at the cornerback room. I mean, RJ Sermons, Brandon Lockhart, who, he shut down his recruiting, I believe. Albert Hill. I mean, that's just in the secondary. I mean, we talked about the offense already a little bit, and then the offensive line as well, bringing in some real, Madden Riordan as well on the cornerback position. So, I mean, I think that's the big thing. Like, you see a lot of these classes for other teams, and they have big names that move them up the rankings, but they don't have the depth at every position like USC does. And so I think that's huge. I mean, I think it's certainly valid to be very excited about the future, just knowing that the rate USC is getting recruits right now, like they have a head full of steam. And I think Rob Ryan only bringing in 2 so far just shows that like what's to come. I mean, the 2 he brought in are very solid. So we're only going to see more come. And again, we're waiting on some official commitment, verbal commits from other guys kind of trickling in. But at the end of the day, I mean, you just kind of sit and wait if you're the outsider and you think, wow, this is a group that is sustainable. There are, a lot of different positions in here. There are guys that can make each other better. And importantly, they're all local. Not all of them, I guess, but like most of the great ones.
You just said 17 recruits. 17 of the 28 are from California. I mean,
most of them. Yeah.